Fantasy managers, this is not a drill. This is not a drill. Christian McCaffrey is back at practice. We dig into our running back and quarterback rankings for Week 10 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. We are here Monday through Friday helping you win your fantasy football leagues. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, and when I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. It is time for us to get into our running back and quarterback rankings. We always start with these two positions for every week, and then we'll get into our wide receivers and tight ends tomorrow. Digging right into the top here at the top running backs. Of course, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry up there. They have just been monsters. It's like it's 2018 again, right?
Yeah.
They're not aging, so we don't even have to discuss them. Kyren Williams has been great. He had a little bit of a mishap last week, but don't worry about it. But what I find super interesting is that you have Christian McCaffrey all the way at running back 4 in his very first game back. Now, we don't know it's official yet, but he is back at practice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they would have waited this long, right? Go through the bye week and then all of that. I mean, they were struggling, so they could have maybe used a spark after Brandon Ayuk had gone down, but they waited, and they even waited through a little bit of a slump for Jordan Mason and then had to go with Isaac Orendo because Mason was getting a little bit worn down with that workload. So I think they've been waiting for Christian McCaffrey. It's a good timing. It's the second half of the season, so still can do a lot in terms of the NFL. It's really hard, though, if you drafted him number 1 overall and you've been missing him the entire season. Hopefully you've been able to survive. Maybe you took Jordan Mason as a handcuff and you've been able to kind of tread water a little bit without him. But this is the stage where you can finally let McCaffrey loose. I think also if you have done well with him, maybe it's a chance to trade him if he does well against the Buccaneers and go from there. But I would assume if he's healthy enough to play, he's not going to be eased in, right? They really don't have that luxury at this point. They got to win games. The Buccaneers are not a pushover. Like, you're just not going to roll over them. They'll be competitive, we know, with Baker Mayfield. So I would expect McCaffrey to be involved quite a bit this week. They should have Juwan Jennings healthy, George Kittle and Deebo Samuel at full strength here. So I'd expect it to be a high-scoring game and involving a lot of the 49ers pass catchers, including McCaffrey.
Yeah, McCaffrey is right back in your lineup. I don't have him as high as you do. I'm at running back 9. I do think maybe in between the 20s, if Mason's healthy enough to go, he'll get some touches, maybe Isaac Orendo. But the area they've been struggling so much in this offense is in the red zone. Like, they're so good at moving the ball still, even without McCaffrey. But the red zone, they stall. Well, McCaffrey is a baller at scoring touchdowns. He had 18 touchdowns in the red zone last year, which led the NFL. So he's going to be involved, especially in that area, and you play him. We have the other normal suspects in our top 10 with Devin Achane, who's been amazing with Tua, Bijan Robinson, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, Jahmyr Gibbs. But I did want to ask you, who do you have more faith in for a bounce back week after a bad week 9? Is it Breece Hall, who's now had 2 bad weeks, actually, against the Cardinals, or Jonathan Taylor against the Bills? The Bills are a pretty easy defense for fantasy running backs this year.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close for me. I do have Jonathan Taylor in the top 12 because, again, it's a good matchup. They just need to stay in the game with Joe Flacco and get to the red zone. You're not going to score touchdowns if you're not in the red zone, Colt. So let's see a little bit better effectiveness. The Bills do give up a lot to the running back. My concern is, however, the Colts offense, the rest of it staying on the field. I don't have too much concern about the Jets. I think they'll move the ball on the Cardinals. I think a lot of that issue last week was the Bears just getting in their own way. They were tripping on themselves. DJ Moore was checking out of the game. They just didn't have a very good game plan, where I think the Jets kind of found their rhythm a little bit. I know it was the Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams game last time on Thursday night against the Texans, but you can beat the Cardinals on the ground. We did see DeAndre Swift have some success in last week's game. Hall is a good versatile back who can catch passes, and I think he could be a lot more involved this week after Wilson and Adams in the passing game, and you get Breece Hall. So I actually do like the Jets to go in there and win. They've had a mini bye. I don't think the Cardinals are as good as their 5-4 record will indicate here. So I think I do like the Jets' chances, and if they can play from ahead, Breece Hall will have a very nice day.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's still, got 15 carries last week. Breece Hall did 74 rushing yards. He's not getting as many opportunities as we'd like around the goal line, but I don't think the Cardinals are as good as the record says either. I think they can win this game. I think Breece Hall will have a nice day. Jonathan Taylor, on the other hand, I would feel better about him if Anthony Richardson is playing because of like the running game. But either way, you're plugging him in, and maybe with Joe Flacco, you might have more scoring opportunities. But after last week's game, I don't have too much faith in that offense together. But we do have them ranked pretty similar. We have Taylor both at running back 12 exactly. I have Breece Hall at running back 10. You have him at 8. So we do expect both to bounce back. Two guys I really love this week, and you have them as good plays as well. But it's Tyrone Tracy Jr. of the Giants. And then in that same game, Chuba Hubbard against for the Panthers against the Giants. So I think both of these guys are going to have great games. Their teams should probably run the ball a lot here because both of their quarterbacks are struggling. The Panthers have allowed the most rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, and by far the most fantasy points per game to running backs this season. So Tyrone Tracy has been looking really good. We've seen him have some big weeks as of late, and I think this is a huge week for him. And then with Hubbard, it's just like the Giants can be run all over as well. And like they're not going to trust Bryce Young out there to throw too much.
Yeah, the Giants have very good pass rush. You don't want to Bryce Young under siege. It's the one thing they do well, but they do not stop the run. They do not stop the deep ball very well. I don't expect a lot of deep ball success, but the front end of that with the running should be good. I look at the matchup here for Tyron Tracy. Now, everyone's been talking about Saquon Barkley in this season, and the Giants should have let him go, but I think the Giants should have let them go because he's not going to help them win a lot more games, right? So the Eagles, luxury addition, he's been great there in a great rushing offense. Well, the Giants have held their own. I mean, Devin Singletary was good early in the season, then he got hurt. Then Tracy had the opportunity, and he really ran with it, really is separated a little bit as a lead back from Singletary. So if you're worried about Singletary cutting into Tracy's workload, I wouldn't, because as a 2-7 team, they want to see the youth. This is going to be a good opportunity not only for Tracy, but Malik Neighbors, see what the rookies can do, and Theo Johnson as well we like. We'll talk about those guys. But the rookies, I think, have to be on display here for the Giants big time in Germany. They got to have something exciting to talk about. We sent them 2-7 teams. Let's at least get some scoring from bad defenses. So I do like that.
The NFL is especially bad at figuring out international games to send over. They're like, how can we pick the worst games possible and put that on the schedule for international games? But yeah, that's not going to be a fun game to wake up at 9, or early in the morning on Saturday to watch. But the running backs, at least.
Make sure you have them in your lineups. Make sure
Malik Neighbors and the running backs, those will be exciting plays. Now we have a lot more running back talk to get to here. We're going to finish up our running back rankings and get to our quarterback rankings right after we take a quick break.
All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you in part by Ultimate Pro Football GM. Hey, fantasy fans, it's back, our great partner, Ultimate Pro Football GM. They've added amazing new game mode. I need to tell you about the game that has you step into the shoes of a football franchise GM and lead it to glory. Now has new head coach career mode. So on top of getting to build your dynasty by drafting players, signing free agents, and hiring coaching staff, now you also get to call offensive plays during games as well. That's kind of fun. Additionally, you'll dig the new tools you can work with, such as individual training camps, upgraded negotiation systems. So it's kind of running your own team in your own way all the way through now what happens on the field. So this is fun, realistic game. It just got a little bit better. If you already have it installed, be sure to do the update so you can try out the new mode of coaching. If you don't have it yet, download it right now. That's Ultimate Pro Football GM. It's a must-have for all football fans. I love it, and I know you will too. It's very competitive. Last time we had a nice league here at the Locked On Network, so it was a lot of fun. Ultimate Pro Football GM is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. And here's a special offer for Locked On fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, Locked On NFL, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. Make sure you get it and the perk will jumpstart your play and give you the advantage you want in creating a dynasty. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com, ultimate-gm.com, or look it up on the App Store. That's Ultimate Pro Football GM. Start your dynasty today. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is also brought to you by Prize Picks. On Friday's show, we always reveal our pick six, kind of 6 prize picks you want to play. That's easy to get in on Prize Picks. All you do is look at the players' projections for a given game, and you just go more or less. Here on the fantasy show, we do more all the time, but you also can go less. And all you have to do is take that number and decide more or less on each player. And it's a lot of fun. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks. All you need is 4 correct picks, and you'll be there. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join more than 10 million users and sign up today. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits, withdrawals into your account this season. So check it out, Prize Picks. It's good for the NFL. You can look at it for the NBA. You can just test your knowledge there and go with it and get some help from Michelle and I on the show on Friday. So check it out. Again, it's Prize Picks, prizepicks.com. Run your game. All right, Michelle, it is time to get into more of our running back rankings. We'll dive a little deeper than the top couple tiers here. RAndre Stevenson. Let's start with him. Look, he's a hard guy to trust week in and week out. Just when you think you're out on him, he produces. This week, they get a matchup in Chicago. By the way, the Bears were completely steamrolled by the Cardinals running game. Not just James Conner, but Trey Benson scored. Amari DeMarcado scored on a long run. Is this a good sign for RAndre Stevenson this week?
So Stevenson has finished as a top 8 running back in 3 of his last 4 games played. The one game was, that terrible game with 3.5 fantasy points, which destroyed you. He has scored 4 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. Last week was a little nerve-wracking that he had 10 carries, 16 yards for 1.6 yards per carry. Like, his efficiency has been really, really terrible the last 3 weeks. Has not averaged more than 2.6 yards per carry in any of the last 3 weeks. So we cannot bet on his efficiency. But the Bears are allowing the 4th most yards per carry to running backs this season. So hopefully it'll be better in this matchup. He has a chance to score a touchdown. So we both have him at running back 19. And I think that's a very fair spot for him.
Yeah, and Drake May seems to look at him. I mean, and we know that Drake May had that crazy scramble to tie the game, and Stevenson was the guy that was open in the end of it. So he can catch passes and help you that way. It seems like they've just used him primarily, right, all over the field. They didn't pay him money, so they do like him. And Drake May just helps his upside a little bit more, and you have to run on the Bears. They do not want Drake May passing on the Bears. You just do not get much out of that. I mean, we saw that with Kyler Murray. Not much passing, not much running in the Bears, but they can get run over. And that, I would think that's New England's game plan this week. So you got to feel a little bit better about Stevenson. Now, Thursday night, we have Chase Brown. He's got the backfield to himself, kind of. Zach Moss out indefinitely, maybe for the season with his neck injury. They did add Khalil Herbert, but it was just this week, right? So at the trade deadline. I don't know how many things he can learn in the playbook in a short period of time. So this is a big opportunity for Chase Brown. I know the matchup on paper is tough against the Ravens' run defense, but this also has the highest point total of the week. Last game was 41-38. It was an insane game. Everyone went off in that game. So Chase Brown has actually ascended now, Michelle, this is true, now point PPR to RB19. So he's right there as an RB2. Are you feeling good about Chase Brown now going forward? I know you like Zach Moss, but I guess you now have to acknowledge that Brown is the guy standing here and producing.
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to get all the workload, he got 100% of the running back touches this last week without Zach Moss there. Like, he's going to get all the work, and now he gets the receiving work too that Moss was getting. So he had 5 targets, 5 receptions. Like, yeah, this Ravens defense is very tough against the run, but they've allowed the 4th most receiving yards to running backs this season, the 2nd most yards per reception to running backs this season. So even if they're struggling to run, he's going to get the receptions. Joe Burrow has been checking it down to his running backs. He's going to get this work. He's going to get all the touches. He's a really, really solid play this week. And the only reason we don't have him ranked higher, I am at 18. I'm trying to find where you have Chase Brown. You have Chase Brown at running back 21. So pretty similar here. The only reason we don't have him higher is because it's a tough matchup, but
Yeah.
you play him. He's getting all the volume. Now, one guy I think you do have to sit is Tank Bigsby. I know he had a couple good games here with Travis Etienne out, and it's really not even like he struggled last week because Etienne was back. He still got the majority of the work, but gets the Vikings. He has scored 2 points, 9.6 points, and 2.2 points in 3 of the last 4 weeks. Only had 8 carries, 22 yards last week. Doesn't get any targets really like at all. And the Vikings are a tough run defense. Like I don't think you can play Tank Bigsby this week.
Yeah, and I don't know. They're forcing Travis Etienne back in the lineup. He's doing nothing. I don't get it with the Jaguars. We know the Raiders got rid of their offense coordinator. We're talking about maybe the Bears doing that soon, but the Jaguars just seem to want to drag this out every week. And this offense is not creative. And then they had Tank Bigsby going off. He was the one thing that was going well. Oh no, we got to get Etienne back in because he's a first round pick. He's buddies with Trevor Lawrence. We got to get him back on the field. Even though Bigsby was crushing it, but you're not going to crush it if you're trailing, if you got to share the backfield. You're not getting enough touches. And then you have Trevor Lawrence stealing all the short yardage touchdown work. So there's not a lot of value there in Bigsby with Etienne and Dearness Johnson. I don't like this at all. So it's kind of very similar, good transition, to that other backfield in Florida, not Devin Achane, but the Buccaneers. I mean, Bucky White or Bucky Irving, and I almost called it Bucky White, Sean Tucker, whatever. It's a combination of all three-headed monster. Bucky Irving / Rashad White. I know White did score last week, but it's brutal. I don't like this at all. It's kind of killed all their value. Like, pick one and give them the ball. And the 49ers aren't a great matchup either.
They're not. They're not the best of matchups. They have had, like, this is the thing with the Buccaneers. It's not only that they're a 3-headed monster, it's that they've had some really tough running back matchups too. I mean, it's been the Falcons and then the Ravens and the Chiefs. It's like these are all hard matchups. So when you put that together with also splitting the backfield, it's hard to trust. The 49ers aren't the best run defense, but it's still like, I think after the break too, after their bye, they're going to have it under control. So let's say you're in a pickle here because either you have Kenneth Walker who's on bye or Josh Jacobs are on bye, or you're dealing with an injury or anything like that. Who would you rather go with among these guys who are splitting a backfield? Would it be Tank Bigsby? Would it be Bucky Irving? Would it be Jordan Mason against the Buccaneers? Or would it be Jaylen Warren against the Commanders?
Yeah, I think I would just take a shot on Jaylen Warren. I don't love it this week because Najee Harris is there, and I'm not sure if they're going to have to pass a little bit more and open it up. But if they pass a little bit more, that's good for Jaylen Warren and bad for Najee Harris. So I think there'll be some checkdowns. They also seem, again, we thought this might be true. Russell Wilson's not really a tight end guy as much. He has been, but to short passes, right? So you have Jaylen Warren as the short pass guy. There's some more checkdowns, as we've talked about a lot with Wilson. You might have to do that. The Commanders have very good pass rush. It's gotten going with Dante Fowler Jr. So I think it's Warren to me. I mean, he still has the most upside because I think it's not like a split. It's like a situational thing where I think the Steelers will have some success against Washington.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Warren as well. The Commanders are allowing the most yards per carry to running backs this season. Unfortunately, they're allowing the fewest receiving yards and receptions to running backs. So not fantastic for Warren, but he's going to have his chances on the ground. We know he can break them, right? He just needs one long one. So if I'm taking a shot on any of these guys for some upside, it would be Jaylen Warren of the Steelers. Now we're going to transition into our quarterback rankings. We've been talking a lot about this Buccaneers 49ers game, and we like one of these quarterbacks a lot. You like both of the quarterbacks a lot. We're going to get into all of that right after a quick break. This episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. A bet I really like is Thursday night, the Bengals +6.5 against the Ravens. I don't know if they'll be able to pull out a win, but this is a necessary game for the Bengals to win. They went into overtime in their week 5 game. I think it'll be close even if they lose. So again, plus 6.5 for the Bengals on Thursday night. And you win $150 in bonus bets if you win your $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So we have pretty much the exact same top 5 quarterbacks in almost the same exact order too. Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Brock Purdy. Mr. Brock Purdy makes our list at number 5 each against the Buccaneers. Tampa Bay is allowing 23 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this season. Only the Jaguars and Buccaneers are allowing more than 20. And in 4 of the last 5 weeks, the quarterback facing the Buccaneers have finished as a top 5 fantasy producer. Even Patrick Mahomes did it. So if Patrick Mahomes can do it, Brock Purdy can do it.
Yeah, and he's going to have a bye to having this to prepare for this long road trip. He should light it up. It seems like there's always some Baker Mayfield, like old school Big 12 kind of back and forth affair. Last week was Mahomes. This week it's Iowa State product Purdy. So when you look at it, look, he's got the weapons. George Kittle should crush it this week. We had all those catches at 100 yards for Travis Kelce last week. Deebo Samuel should be involved. Juwan Jennings can make plays. McCaffrey's going to have some catches. It just goes on and on. There's just a bunch of guys who can make plays here for Brock Purdy, and he's played a lot better than people think. Now, he set a possible bar last year with the way he was throwing downfield. Give him a break. He's had lost Brandon Ayuk. And Brandon Ayuk was disinterested for the early part of the season as well. So that was part of it with his numbers. But he's going to get it done, execute. This could be one of those 49ers step on the gas games. And that's a good transition to why I like Baker Mayfield. This guy is just relentlessly throwing. He has to throw even more. It hasn't stopped him from throwing without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. He's just throwing a different dude. So this is the Liam Cohen offense at work. And I think this system, I didn't expect this, but this system is actually even better for him than what we saw with Dave Canales.
Yeah, the fact that Baker on the road against the Chiefs was able to put up 2 touchdowns against the Chiefs, 0 interceptions, throwing the Sterling Shepard and K. Dotton and really like just no one else out there. Like he's playing amazingly this year. And it really stinks for him that he chose the wrong, heads or tails on the coin toss in overtime. But he is playing great. Now, the quarterback that beat him last week was Patrick Mahomes. He was facing the Buccaneers. We both loved him last week after he hasn't done anything for fantasy in nearly a full year prior to this last week. I'm putting him right back down. Loved him last week. Had him as my top 8. Putting him back down to quarterback 15 this week against the Broncos. You have him at quarterback 12, so you pretty much agree with me here.
Yeah, he's going to go down mainly because he's not going to get resistance, right? That was key. Mayfield was throwing the ball. We said that was going to be a part of it, too, that there's a chance the Buccaneers could stay in the game, and they did all the way through overtime. But do we really believe the Broncos, after what we saw in Baltimore, are going to stay in the game in Kansas City? I'm not feeling it, right? They're not going to be able to run the ball. Bo Nix is going to be contained. So Mahomes may not need to throw a lot, but I will say this. I think Mahomes is feeling it a little bit with DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce. I think he's in his comfort zone with those two guys because they're veterans who can get open whenever he wants them. And then you're seeing all these other dudes do something, right? Cole Hardman had an appearance. He had Justin Watson was hanging around, right? So I think he needed 2 veterans he could trust quite a bit. And Kareem Hunt, however, can also smash it. And they scored a lot of rushing touchdowns this year as well. So we got to balance that out. I think 215-2 is probably your best, highest bet here for Mahomes this week.
Yeah, it's just one of those. They're just going to run all over him. They don't need him. I just don't trust it. And it's hard to even trust DeAndre Hopkins. We'll get into that tomorrow's show with our wide receiver rankings. But it's hard to know if they just started clicking and it's going to be great moving forward, or if it was just because it was against the Buccaneers, which everyone destroys the Buccaneers defense in the secondary. So that's going to be a hard thing to decipher here and determine until we see more evidence. Now, we both like Jaden Daniels, even in a harder matchup against the Steelers, but you don't sit him, right? He's our quarterback 7 each. He'd be higher in a better matchup, but quarterback 7, Now, we also both like Sam Darnold. He's our quarterback 8 against the Jaguars this year, who are allowing the most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season.
Yeah, it seems like this is one of the certainties of fantasy football in 2024. There's not a lot, but one is that the Jaguars always give up a lot of points to wide receivers and quarterbacks. Now,
Yep.
well, Sam Darnold has been cruising with Justin Jefferson, right? He pretty much automatically starts with like 150 yards that Justin Jefferson is going to get. So he's already halfway to 300 with one receiver. It's a great matchup for Jordan Addison. It's a great matchup for TJ Hawkinson, who should be a little bit more involved this week in the game plan. Jalen Naylor is always out there scoring touchdowns when he needs them. So this could be another big, big game. And the nature of the Vikings, I know they have Aaron Jones, whatever, but they're a passing team under Kevin O'Connell. That's been their kind of MO. Why wouldn't you be when you have Justin Jefferson? So Sam Darnold should have a nice day here. It could be a bit sloppy, like we've seen. Sam Darnold can have some turnovers. It could be a little slop fest between him and Trevor Lawrence. But he's going to compile, and I think he can easily put up 300 yards with a couple of scores at least in this game.
Yeah, I even Sam Darnold, has not looked nearly as good as he did to start the year, he can put up a big performance against this Jaguars defense. If Joe Flacco can do it, and Caleb Williams did it, and Drake May did it, so can Sam Darnold. Now let's talk about CJ Stroud here, because right now I have him ranked as quarterback 14. You have him at 18 against the Lions. If Nico Collins, if it's official that he plays, I will be moving up CJ Stroud a bit. He did finish as a top 9 quarterback in 2 of the 4 weeks played with Nico Collins this season. Will you also be moving him up inside your top 12 if Nico Collins is active?
Yeah, it's very hard with CJ Stroud because he doesn't give you that cheat code. Like if you're stuck right in the pocket and he's under siege like last week, then you're going to get no rushing yards whatsoever. So he's really touchdown dependent. What's also hurt him is that Joe Mixon is scoring like crazy, and that's taking away the touchdowns. Now, if Nico Collins plays, I think it's a little bit more. I might bump him up a few spots, but he still hasn't been all that good. You mentioned only 2 top 9 finishes with Collins. Again, the Lions are a sneaky defense, right? They seem pretty weak on the back end, but I think they've also gotten better the last couple of weeks, right? I think Terry Arnold's growing up a little bit and just scheming a little bit better. So I'm just worried, right? If the Lions get a lead in this one and they just go nuts on CJ Stroud, like I don't know if that's actually good because we want him to throw for high volume, but what the Lions can do is just keep the ball away, grind it, do the rushing attack and keep it away from him. So I'm a little bit worried. I think this is a bit of a boom or bust play this week, and I'm leaning a little bit more toward the bust side given how the Lions defense is playing.
I'm leaning a little bit more towards the boob side. I'm starting to get more optimistic. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Let's hope so.
If Nico Collins plays. If he doesn't, then I go back to probably.
It looks like he's going to play, so I think that's pushing in the right direction, at least for CJ Stroud, because he needs this guy. He needs someone out in the field with Tank Dell.
Definitely. Now, 2 guys we talked about on yesterday's show is good streamers that you can pick up and play. We have both Daniel Jones and Justin Herbert ranked inside our top 13 this week. We actually have them flip-flop. So I have Daniel Jones at 11, Herbert at 13. You have Herbert at 11 against the Titans and Daniel Jones 13 against the Panthers. The reason why I like Daniel Jones a bit more is just like we've seen higher upside from him, right? Even with Herbert looking better the last 2 weeks, it's still been quarterback 10, quarterback 13. While Daniel Jones last week finishes the quarterback 3. We know he can get the rushing, and this Panthers matchup is just so incredibly juicy. While with Herbert, he has been playing better and he can beat up these bad teams. But will he have to against the Titans, right? Could they just run a lot, play good defense? That's my only worry, but I do think both of these guys are solid plays this week.
Yeah, I mean, with Justin Herbert, again, I do like Daniel Jones. If you're looking for just this week only, I mentioned it on the show with Waiver Wire. I do like Justin Herbert. Aaron Rodgers a little bit more beyond this week to give you some value. I think Herbert gets the Chargers next week, so that's really nice. I'm sorry, Herbert gets the Bengals next week. He always gets the Chargers, but they're in prime time. So you figure that's going to be a nice high-scoring affair with Joe Burrow next week. So I think Herbert has to be rostered. I think he's turning the corner. Now, I think Jones actually might have the higher ceiling, right? Because he can run around. We talked about Tracy and Neighbors helping him out with Theo Johnson. There actually could be more points in that game than we think. Well, I think Justin Herbert could have an easy day at the office. And look, it really comes down to does he get the 2 touchdowns? I think he can easily throw for 275, 280 again, but does he get the 2 scores or the J.K. Dobbin and the defense show, right, scoring the scores. So the Titans also are decent against the pass, actually, by the numbers. So Herbert, it's more based on his talent and play, while Jones is more about the matchup than Jones's talent.
Yeah. And also Malik Neighbors, right? Who we'll be getting into
Yeah.
tomorrow's show. I'm going to have him ranked top 5, spoiler alert. But we'll leave that for tomorrow. That is it for today's episode. Thank you to all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Everydayers, go hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That'll help us greatly. Leave us a review on your whatever your app you're listening to the podcast on, and give us a like. Thank you again. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.